There have been a whole host of armies that Games Workshop has abandoned. Some of them have just been small mentions in the lore, and others have had entire ranges of models that have been discarded. But there is one army that stands above them all.
Their journey has been a torturous road, not just because of how beloved they are in the community and how amazing their very bizarre GW incarnations have been, but because they are one of the largest and most important factions in all of Warhammer 40k and the Horus Heresy. Now here at Zorpazorp, we are Horace's tiny micro balls deep into the Horus Heresy. We've launched an absolutely mental narrative campaign, the Mark of Calth, comprising over 50,000 points of models, 30 videos, including 8 utterly insane cinematic narrative battle reports that are the most immersive Warhammer content on YouTube. And as I began to plan this monstrosity over a year ago, I became overjoyed at the prospect of returning to one of my first loves, all the way back in 3rd edition of 40k, and finally giving them the love and the spotlight that they deserved. Today I am so absolutely over the moon to finally present to you the filthy, the traitorous, the utterly erstwhile Renegade Guard. Yes, these once loyal soldiers of the Imperium have thrown in their lot with the ruinous powers and form an absolutely massive portion of the forces of the Dark Gods in both Warhammer 40k and the Horus Heresy. Their journey as a faction and a model range has been tumultuous to say the least, and now they find themselves in pretty much utter obscurity in spite of the majority of Warhammer fans expecting them to finally become a major playable force in the last year or two. Although, just as a quick aside from present day Lockie, since I wrote this script 3 months ago, we have had a little Renegade Guard kill team release, so maybe, just maybe, there could be a brighter future ahead. My journey began with these guys in an amazing White Dwarf Australia article back when the magazine was done regionally, known as the Tandarus Outbreak, that used rules for the Renegade Guard from a 3rd edition Eye of Terror PDF supplement that you could download from Games Workshop for free. Yes, I know, what a time to be alive. And that began my first army that truly summoned my love for insane army themes and conversions. Over the years since, they have had a range of niche releases and even dominated the meta during 7th edition 40k when they were a playable faction out of the Forge World Renegaders and Traitors Index, until in 9th edition they just completely disappeared. Most fans of The Lost and the Damned saw this alongside with a release of some amazing plastic sculpts exclusively to Warhammer Quest Blackstone Fortress as the herald of an imminent major release for the faction, but it has to this day never eventuated. But do you know where you can run them? In the Horus Heresy. So today we're creating a force of Renegade Guard themed heavily by the cults and militia supporting the traitorous 17th Legiones Astartes, the Wordbearers, who have a serious level of depth to them as outlined by the mighty Dan Abnett in his masterpiece Know No Fear, whose events our narrative campaign follows in brutal detail.
The 3rd beam kills the Baneblade. It hits the hull square under the throat of the turret, and the tank ruptures and explodes.
But I'll also be building this force of guard in such a way as to keep it legal to both the original 3rd edition Lost in the Damned Codex and the most likely unit formations for any future releases. So, without further ado, let's dive in deep to the land of insane conversions and mental levels of theme in the latest edition of the coolest Warhammer army you've never heard of. A quick little aside, currently the cults and militia don't have their new edition rules yet for the Horus Heresy, but Warhammer community have confirmed that they are definitely coming, and most player bases around the world are simply happy to let players use the 1st edition rules as a stopgap. So, how the fuck do we actually make these guys? Well, our first port of call is the amazing plastic kit from Blackstone Fortress, which now, sadly, each box only comes with 14 sculpts in 2 duplicate poses of 7. So luckily, I managed to score 4 sets totaling 28 miniatures, which was a good start to begin bulking out the force. While I was down on my mate Dan from Full Scaled Conflicts Workshop, we were working on some other projects for my Mechanicum army.
And I need some varnish. Let me in.
What the hell?
I threw together the first 3 sets without any major conversion work, and I'm fine with those duplicate poses, to be honest. They're mono pose, so converting them would be a pain, and the sculpts are just so lovely, I don't care if a couple of them are the same. I set those aside for now, and then I dug deep through the amazing hoard of plastic crack here at Dan's workshop, and we stumbled upon an absolute gem. A selection of the now very out of production Forge World Renegade Guard range. So I pocketed these after some promises to allow him to paint even more for me. Back at Zorpazorp Studios, I started planning out the force in more detail, diving deep both into Know No Fear by Dan Abnett and Black Book 5 Tempest, a campaign supplement from the first edition of Horus Heresy that focuses on the Battle of Calth. The word bearers were actually supported by a whole range of different cults, worshipping different tenets of the Word of Lorgar and the Dark Gods. These cults range from Imperial army units that have turned to dark worship following the example of the 17th Legion, right down to primitive cultures from distant worlds made compliant by the word bearers, whose ancient rituals and practices were already influenced by the primordial truth. So I decided on 3 cults to form the bulk of my force: the Ushmeta Khal, the Brotherhood of the Knife, the Khal Mendari, the Gene-Bound, and the Jeoanate. I wanted these 3 sub-elements of the force to feel different, to look different, and to play differently on the battlefield. So I knew I would be converting them from different sets of models, but I really wanted to experiment with this idea, so I decided I would hire 3 of my mates who are commission artists to paint each sub-faction, but give them the exact same brief. That way, I'll get color schemes that are harmonious and yet unique, and then I can tie them all together with consistent basing materials. The first cult would be a regiment of Imperial army that descended down the Dark Path a long time ago and will be made exclusively of the Blackstone Fortress Renegade Guardsmen. These units are well into the madness of the word bearers and are known as the Khal Mendari or the Gene-Bound, and mutate and surgically modify themselves to serve dark warp magic rituals, but their war gear is still reasonable quality, so I decided to run them as the regular militia profiles, but equip them all with close combat weapons as per their lust for battle. The entire force also has the Cult Horde provenance, which compels them to charge into combat and gives them the Zealot special rule, allowing them to reroll failed hits on the first turn of combat, as well as ignoring a bunch of morale checks. Perfectly themey for these religious fanatics. With 20 of these bad boys ready to go, I shipped them off to my mate Ryan from Battlecraft Hobbies, and he got to work. Now, getting armies together for such a massive campaign as this was a huge amount of effort, and there were a lot of crazy builds and conversions from Gilliman right up to my Warlord Titan, and it left me pondering one of the greatest questions of the universe of any wargamer. Magnets, where do I find them? Well, look no further than the MagnetBaron.com, your DIY super magnet home. I've been doing loads of magnetization lately for the staggering amount of Horus Heresy vehicles drowning my studio, and super strong magnets designed for wargaming are an absolute god emperor send. The MagnetBaron.com have a huge range of wargaming magnets, including specific kits for notoriously difficult to magnetize models, magnetized movement trays, and even magnetized collapsible flight stands for that epic wargaming travel experience. I challenge you to find a better feeling in all of wargaming than the pure bliss of this moment. Magnetic perfection.
Oh, that is a strong magnet.
Seriously, I have used a lot of magnets over the years, from cheap stuff from eBay, China, from hobby stores, and nothing has ever come close to the strength and quality of Constantine's magnets from the Magnet Baron. I was especially blown away by the ridiculous Titan magnet kit that you guys can see me here using on my Warlord. I also used it on my Reaver Titan. You'll see the journey of these guys coming to life in a few weeks, but that is a lot of heavy resin, but the magnets are so powerful, I'm not even remotely nervous that my Titan's gonna drop an arm or a weapon or split apart at the middle. So to score some boss wargaming magnets for all your army needs, hit up the MagnetBaron.com, link down in the description. And remember guys, support the sponsors that support me. It is killer for the channel, it helps so much. And Constantine from the Magnet Baron is a proper legend.
From the MagnetBaron.com.
So definitely go and show him some love. Alright guys, let's get back to the battle. While Rhino is furiously painting a few houses down from my studio, it was time for squad number 2, and I am super excited about these guys. It was time to put the old school
school Forge World torsos to good use. Now this cult, the Ushmeta Khal, the Brotherhood of the Knife, represent a group of Imperial Army veterans, the cream of the Wordbearer's auxiliary crop. Their main war gear is ragged, which is perfect with the Forge World torsos, but they're also smart, skilled, and highly motivated. They all came to the battlefield prepared with rebreathers. They knew what was coming, the death of the sun, Viridia in the Calth system, and they also used the ambush at the muster site to fully gear up and replace their old battered Crusade pattern auxiliary rifles with the Ultramar pattern las carbines. So the perfect source of complementary bits for this Forge World Renegade kit bash was the new plastic Death Corps of Krieg veteran guardsmen. I started experimenting by using the legs from the Krieg models, separating them from the torsos, and then mounting the Forge World Renegade torsos in their place, and it worked reasonably well. The scale is basically perfect, and with some green stuff work later on to sort of kind of blend that together and get that seam really nice, it was really going to sell. The Guardsman arms were a bit tricky, as the Renegade torsos are slightly wider, but I'm convinced it'll sell after some more green stuff work. I used a huge mix of parts to build in heaps of looted gear vibes and started thinking about my squad formation. I had already used 4 of these sculpts to be some diorama style crew for my Wordbearer's Baneblade that you guys will see in a future video or may have already seen, I can't remember. So to keep the cream of the crop theme, I decided to build a command squad and a grenadier squad. These profiles are better at shooting than the standard guardsmen and have more access to war gear and a better armor save, a perfect fit for the theme of the Ushmeta Khal. My platoon commander got a looted power sword, the Vox operator got a perfect upgrade from the Krieg sprue, but for the standard pairer, I decided to use an awesome little totem banner thingy from a box set we're going to use in squad number 3, and used one of the remaining Blackstone Renegade Guard sculpts who was close to the Forge World torsos in aesthetics. For my special weapons in the Grenadier squad, I went for grenade launchers, which fitted well with the besieging of Leptius Numinous in the first episode of our campaign, and man, I absolutely love these guys. There is so much damn character already. I decided to give them some extra special rules for flavor, upgrading their las locks and las rifles to have +1 strength with the advanced weapon option under the Survivors of the Dark Age to represent that these weapons were looted from the Calth army forces. Now it's time to send these bad boys off to Sam from the Artificer's Forge and get to work on quite possibly the coolest cult of all, the Jeowenate. Our first 2 sub-factions have been heavily influenced by the Imperial Army. These guys are going to lead much more into the primitive cultures who are deeply immersed in ritual sacrifice and dark beliefs dating back thousands of years, and they are the ultimate starting models for these conversions is another group of poorly armed zealots, House Cawdor from Necromunda. I picked up 2 of these boxes and started smashing out the poses, trying to vary them as much as possible, which actually took a fair bit of work. This box set is the classic example of modern Games Workshop plastic design. Everything comes in 30 million pieces, and yet for some reason the poses are completely prescriptive. The only pretense of variation is when one set of legs and torsos can be built in 2 different ways, and that's not because there's additional customization, it's because you actually only get 5 types of legs and torsos in a box of 10 models. Anyway, I absolutely hacked them to pieces, swapping arms, legs, weapons, but I absolutely hated their heads. So I looked around for a handy replacement and oh well, what do you know, I just cut up a whole bunch of Death Corps of Krieg Veteran Guard and didn't use their heads. In fact, even though Dan Abnett describes the Jeowenate as being full of absolutely dog peasants, to quote my beloved Ryan Trace, they are all equipped with breathing apparatus as they knew about the betrayal well in advance, and as the Wordbearer's grand plan is to literally kill the sun and turn the planet into a radioactive wasteland, these guys were kitted out with rebreathers. I made a few slightly modified shortened gas masks and kept some of them standard. I really love the kind of unique aesthetic that brings to the headgear across the squad. Then as I pondered loadouts, I absolutely fell in love with these crazy crossbow rocket things. This is like Games Workshop's answer to the Panzerfaust. As the 2 sprues are just the same, 1 twice in each box, you actually get 4 of these things, and as Dan Abnett in No Fear describes the cultists attempting to blow up large sections of the wall with Leptius Numinous with improvised rocket launchers, bingo, it was time to build a special weapons team. So that is 1 10-man squad, jammed with all the rocket launchers and a few cultists that look a little bit more kitted out and organized, and then that leaves the rest of my force of primitive nutjob zealots who I have decided to run as inducted levies, which are they're just absolute garbage. They're even worse than the regular guardsman, like, militia profile. They're terrible. They're worse at shooting, fighting, they've got weaker armor, but one cool element of flavor for this squad is that they are led by a custodian, who is essentially a regular guardsman in charge of keeping them in line, so I decided that my one spare traitor guard sergeant was just the man for the job. So that is the J1ate ready to head off to Davey from DTA Paints for a mean old paint job. So I gave my 3 mates, Ryan, Sam, and Davey, the exact same brief. These 4 photos and a few buzzwords and key phrases like super drab and these guys are absolute trash and do this roughly but feel free to go a bit off limb but don't paint them purple or something. And then I got back 3 amazing and yet unique schemes who still feel like they belong in the same force.
With the models arrived from the guys, it was time to give them a quick basing routine with my Grimdark City Rubble and City Rubble blend down over some fast-drying basing glue and then sealed in with isopropyl alcohol to capillary act my matte scenic sealant. All those basing supplies are available from my store down in the links below. And then these guys are looking absolutely amazing. We've got 3 very distinct schemes here and kind of a nice take on that original recipe that I gave the lads, but they feel so unified with the common basing. They feel like one army, but you can tell the units apart. We've got Ryan's lovely squad. He's really followed that black and brown element, and he's got like a kind of key poppy color of yellow, which really gives his sort of unit that nice accent that's really different, and he leans more into the blacks and grays with a mid-tone of browns. And then we've got Davey's lovely guys, and he's really lent into the browns with kind of red as his accent color, and then all of his metalworks have a lovely silver, desaturated kind of monochromatic feel to them, which I really love. And then for the Ush Metakal by Sam, I've got heaps more browns, bit of grays, bit of blacks, and then a lovely kind of brassy element going on as well as silver metallics. So they've got these really unique kind of sub-elements within the broader palette that combines them, and they just look amazing on the tabletop. I'm so happy with how they've turned out, and they just looked amazing in the campaign. If you haven't seen any of the episodes of the campaign so far, the link is down in the description. You can see these cultists going off, and it is so nice to finally have some Lost and the Damned back in my arsenal. I cannot wait to take these units that I've built here and start getting them ready and building them towards the Tandarus Outbreak campaign later next year, but that's a little bit of a spoiler. So, Lost and the Damned are back. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you want to support the channel, you can check out our Patreon or my online store for all your basing and scenery needs, or you can jump on over to Zorpazorp I never remember to promote the merch. We have merch. It's amazing. Bo designed it. It's gorgeous. So go and check that out. Thank you so much for watching, and stay tuned because we've got a whole heap more kind of hobby vlog videos coming for Heresy and for Middle-earth, and of course big scenery for both and big battle reports as well. So I'll see you right here next time on the channel. Thanks for watching.